The world we know was shaped by conflict, not just by treaties or borders, but by the aftermath of World War I. The Treaty of Versailles, meant to secure peace, instead left Germany humiliated and economically shattered. Hyperinflation and despair gripped the nation, making daily life nearly impossible. In this chaos, Adolf Hitler rose, channeling anger and promising to restore German pride. He blamed outsiders and minorities, fueling hatred and rallying desperate people to his Nazi party. Across the globe, the Great Depression deepened suffering, and other leaders like Mussolini in Italy and militarists in Japan seized power with similar promises. These nations, Germany, Italy, and Japan, formed alliances, believing might made right. The world became a chessboard, with powerful nations maneuvering for dominance. When people are desperate, they often follow those who offer simple answers, even if it leads to disaster. Hitler's vision was not just about Germany, but about reshaping the world order. Meanwhile, Japan sought to expand its empire in Asia, and Italy dreamed of a new Roman Empire. The seeds of a global conflict were sown, and the world edged closer to war. The stage was set for a confrontation that would engulf the planet. The alliances and resentments of the 1930s would soon explode into the deadliest war in history. The world was about to change forever. As war loomed, the world split into two camps, the Axis and the Allies. The Axis was led by Hitler's Germany, Mussolini's Italy, and militarist Japan. Each sought expansion and dominance, united by aggression. The Allies began with Britain and France, soon joined by nations like Canada and Australia. Britain, first led by Chamberlain and then by Churchill, stood defiant after France fell. France, unprepared for Germany's speed, was quickly overrun. The Soviet Union, under Stalin, initially signed a non-aggression pact with Hitler, secretly dividing Poland. But this uneasy peace was only temporary. The United States, led by President Roosevelt, tried to stay out of the conflict, haunted by memories of World War I. Yet, Roosevelt recognized the threat and began aiding the Allies through Lend-Lease. The world watched, wondering if America would join the fight. The stage was set for a global struggle, with leaders whose ambitions would shape the fate of millions. The alliances were fragile and trust was scarce. The coming war would test every nation's resolve and reshape the world order. The world braced for the storm. On September 1, 1939, Hitler's armies invaded Poland, unleashing Blitzkrieg, lightning war. Tanks and planes overwhelmed Poland, and Britain and France declared war on Germany. After Poland fell, a brief lull, the Phony War, ended when Germany struck Denmark, Norway, and then France. Bypassing strong defenses, German tanks poured through the Ardennes, trapping Allied forces at Dunkirk. In a daring rescue, civilian boats evacuated over 330,000 soldiers, a miracle that lifted Allied spirits. France soon fell, leaving Britain alone against Hitler. Hitler turned to the skies, launching the Battle of Britain. The RAF, outnumbered but determined, defended their homeland against relentless Luftwaffe attacks. Churchill's words inspired a nation. Never was so much owed by so many to so few. The RAF's victory forced Hitler to abandon his invasion plans. Britain stood as the last bastion of resistance in Western Europe. The war had only just begun, and the world watched anxiously. The Allies' survival depended on courage, innovation, and unity. The conflict was spreading, and no nation would remain untouched. The stakes had never been higher. The world was at war. Frustrated by Britain's resistance, Hitler turned east, launching Operation Barbarossa against the Soviet Union in June 1941. Over 3 million German soldiers stormed into Soviet territory, expecting a quick victory. Early successes gave way to disaster as the vastness of Russia and the brutal winter stalled the German advance. Ill-equipped for the cold, German troops suffered, while the Soviets regrouped and counterattacked near Moscow. The war on the Eastern Front became a grinding, merciless struggle. The true turning point came at Stalingrad in late 1942. Fierce house-to-house fighting devastated the city. Soviet forces, led by General Zhukov, encircled and trapped the German Sixth Army. Cut off and freezing, the Germans surrendered in February 1943. Stalingrad shattered Hitler's dream of conquering the East. From that moment, the Red Army began its relentless push toward Berlin. The tide of war had turned. The cost was immense. Millions dead, cities destroyed. The Eastern Front would remain the war's bloodiest theater. The world saw the true horrors of total war. The Allies now had hope. While Europe burned, Japan expanded across Asia, clashing with the United States over resources. In response to U.S. embargoes, Japan launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. The attack devastated the U.S. Pacific Fleet but united America in resolve. The United States declared war and the conflict became truly global. Japan's early victories swept across the Pacific, but the tide turned at the Battle of Midway in June 1942. American codebreakers set a trap, sinking 4 Japanese carriers and crippling Japan's naval power. Midway marked a turning point, allowing the U.S. to go on the offensive. The Allies began a grueling island-hopping campaign, retaking territory step by step. Japanese rule was harsh and the fighting was brutal. The Pacific War would be long and costly. The world watched as 2 giants clashed across oceans and islands. The outcome would shape the fate of Asia and the world. The struggle for the Pacific had begun. With the Soviets advancing from the east, the Western Allies prepared to invade Nazi-occupied France. On June 6, 1944, D-Day, Allied forces stormed the beaches of Normandy in the largest amphibious invasion ever. Despite fierce resistance, they secured a foothold and began liberating France. Paris was freed in August, and the Allies pushed toward Germany. Hitler's last gamble came in December with the Battle of the Bulge, a surprise attack in the Ardennes. American forces, surrounded and outnumbered, held firm until reinforcements arrived. The German offensive failed, exhausting their remaining strength. The road to Berlin was now open. The Allies closed in from the west while the Soviets pressed from the east. The end of the Third Reich was near. The world braced for the final battles. The cost of victory would be high. The war in Europe was reaching its climax. After the failed German offensive, Allied and Soviet forces raced toward Berlin. German cities lay in ruins, and civilians fled the advancing armies. The Soviets fought fiercely through Berlin's shattered streets in April 1945. In his bunker, Hitler chose suicide as defeat became inevitable. Berlin surrendered to the Soviets, and Germany signed an unconditional surrender on May 8, 1945, VE Day. Celebrations erupted worldwide, but the horrors of the Holocaust were revealed as Allied troops liberated concentration camps. 6 million Jews and millions of others had been murdered in a crime without parallel. The world confronted the depths of human cruelty. The war in Europe was over, but its scars would last forever. The cost was unimaginable. The world vowed never to forget. A new era was about to begin. Even as Europe celebrated, the Pacific War raged on. American forces faced fierce resistance on islands like Iwo Jima and Okinawa. The prospect of invading Japan promised staggering casualties. Meanwhile, the U.S. developed the atomic bomb in the top-secret Manhattan Project. President Truman, seeking to end the war swiftly, ordered its use. On August 6 and 9, 1945, atomic bombs devastated Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The destruction was unprecedented, and Japan faced invasion by Soviet forces as well. Emperor Hirohito announced surrender on August 15, 1945, VJ Day. The official surrender was signed on September 2, ending World War II. The atomic age had begun, and the world was forever changed. The war's end brought relief, but also new fears. Humanity had entered a new and uncertain era. The war's end left the world shattered, cities in ruins, millions dead or displaced. 2 superpowers emerged, the United States and the Soviet Union, soon locked in a Cold War. The United Nations was founded in 1945, aiming to prevent future global conflict. The Nuremberg trials held Nazi leaders accountable for war crimes, establishing new standards for justice. The war accelerated technology, ended empires, and redrew borders. It forced humanity to confront both its darkest impulses and its capacity for resilience. The legacy of World War II shapes our world to this day. The lessons of sacrifice, cruelty, and hope remain vital. The war's memory urges us to seek peace and understanding. Our world was broken and remade by this conflict. The cost of hatred was written in blood and loss. We must remember, so that history's darkest chapters are never repeated. The story of World War II is a warning and a call to build a better future.